One of the most humiliating moments ever to unfold around Meghan Markle may have happened in just a few seconds, and the most explosive part is that the cameras caught everything. Meghan Markle stood on a red carpet, extended her hand, smiled toward David Foster, and appeared ready for the kind of warm greeting that photographs beautifully. Instead, David Foster walked straight past. No handshake, no eye contact, no pause, nothing, and suddenly, what should have been a glamorous charity evening became a public spectacle that raised one brutal question. Was this an innocent accident, or did David Foster deliberately make a point in front of everyone? The image is difficult to ignore. David Foster, a legendary figure in the music industry and a man once described as Prince Harry's surrogate father figure, appeared to move past Meghan Markle as though she simply wasn't there. That single visual exploded because it wasn't happening in some private hallway where nobody could see. It happened directly in front of cameras, reporters, and an audience trained to notice every tiny movement. And suddenly, the carefully polished Montecito image collided with something far less controllable: body language. But this wasn't just another celebrity event. It was the 40th and final fundraising gala for the David Foster Foundation in Canada, a major milestone built around decades of charitable work. The foundation reportedly covered the Sussexes' private jet travel and luxury hotel accommodations, making the evening even more significant. Yet instead of allowing the event to remain centered on David Foster's philanthropic legacy, a storm of allegations began circulating about backstage tension, demands, seating arrangements, and a growing battle over attention. According to the narrative surrounding the evening, Meghan Markle was allegedly determined to secure prominent photographic moments while organizers were trying to maintain the structure of their own event. And then came the red carpet. Meghan reached out her arm with that familiar camera-ready smile, apparently expecting recognition. David Foster shifted away and posed with Katharine McPhee. That tiny movement became the photograph everyone wanted to dissect. Was it deliberate? Was it simply bad timing? Or was something already simmering behind the scenes before the cameras ever arrived? Because here's where the story gets truly strange. Once the footage started spreading, explanations began appearing. One defense suggested David Foster simply hadn't seen Meghan Markle. Another emphasized his admiration for Princess Diana. Then another narrative reportedly portrayed David Foster as delighted to see Harry and Meghan, pointing toward their shared Montecito connection. But if everything was perfectly friendly, why did one awkward moment require so much explanation? That is the question that turned a few seconds of uncomfortable footage into a full-blown public relations disaster. The reaction became almost more fascinating than the original incident. Instead of disappearing beneath the next celebrity headline, the controversy kept growing because every explanation seemed to invite another question. If David Foster had already greeted the Sussexes earlier, why did the carpet footage look so cold? If the relationship was supposedly warm, why did the public immediately sense distance? And if this was merely positioning, why did the situation require such forceful public clarification? This is where the alleged Montecito PR strategy enters the picture. Critics argued that the response transformed a fleeting red carpet moment into something much larger. What could have died naturally became a conversation about friendship, celebrity access, reputation, and whether Hollywood figures are becoming increasingly uncomfortable being pulled into Sussex-related controversies. And then came the statement attributed to David Foster. It reportedly rejected the idea of a snub and criticized media coverage for turning ordinary positioning into something hurtful. But that language itself became another source of suspicion among commentators. Why? Because the public wasn't simply judging the words, they were comparing those words against the visual evidence they had already watched repeatedly. That is the dangerous territory of modern celebrity scandals. Once people have seen the footage, a statement can no longer erase the image. It can only compete with it. And the image was now everywhere. The larger controversy also opened an uncomfortable conversation about the Sussexes' relationships inside celebrity circles. Critics began connecting the David Foster episode to other occasions when small moments involving Harry and Meghan reportedly escalated into major public stories. Suddenly, people weren't just discussing one red carpet. They were asking whether there was a recurring pattern where the celebrity relationships around the couple could survive the intense scrutiny, speculation, and public relations battles that seemed to follow them. That is why David Foster's brief movement became so explosive. It wasn't merely about whether one man said hello, it was about status, it was about access, and most importantly, it was about what happens when the cameras capture something that carefully managed public relations cannot completely control. The story became even more explosive once attention moved away from the carpet and toward what was allegedly happening behind the scenes. Reports claim the atmosphere between David Foster and the Sussexes had become painfully stiff throughout the evening, with disagreements allegedly involving seating, photographs, and the way the event was unfolding. Instead of occupying the central table reserved for major donors and key performers, Harry and Meghan were reportedly seated away from the main focus of the room. And that detail matters, because at a prestigious charity gala, seating is never merely about where somebody happens to sit. It can quietly communicate importance, priority, and access without anyone having to say a single word. Then came the photography dispute. David Foster reportedly wanted a clean photographic moment with Katharine McPhee to mark the historic final gala of his foundation. But according to allegations surrounding the evening, Harry and Meghan lingered around the press area rather than immediately clearing the space. Meghan was reportedly determined to secure additional photographs, creating an increasingly awkward situation as stage managers attempted to keep the arrivals moving. Whether every allegation is accurate remains disputed, but the central visual mystery remained impossible to escape. Why did the atmosphere appear so uncomfortable when everyone supposedly had such a warm relationship? And then the controversy widened dramatically. Commentary surrounding the evening began pointing toward a much larger celebrity pattern. Serena Williams, Bianca, the Kardashians, Jamie Kern-Lima, and other famous names were suddenly dragged into the conversation as commentators questioned whether the Sussexes were becoming increasingly isolated from Hollywood's most powerful circles. The argument wasn't simply that individual celebrities had failed to acknowledge Meghan, it was that a growing number of high-profile relationships appeared noticeably quieter, colder, or less public than before. That is where the Martha Stewart comparison entered the discussion, along with the controversy surrounding Kris Jenner's 70th birthday celebration. Critics argued that moments involving Harry and Meghan repeatedly seemed capable of overwhelming the original event itself. Instead of the hosts, the charitable causes, or the people being honored remaining at the center, the conversation allegedly shifted toward the Sussexes and whatever controversy surrounded them that night. In celebrity culture, that can become toxic very quickly. Nobody wants their carefully planned milestone transformed into another international argument, and David Foster's evening appeared to carry exactly that risk. The allegations about Meghan's behavior became even more dramatic when commentators claimed she had been frustrated about photographs and visibility, while Harry appeared reluctant to become part of the spectacle. One particularly uncomfortable claim involved Meghan allegedly urging Harry to get up and sing on stage, supposedly attempting to pull attention toward their table. Harry, meanwhile, appeared uncomfortable in the footage, creating another strange visual contrast between the couple and the powerful figures controlling the room. Even the couple's appearance became ammunition for critics. Unfiltered photographs were compared with more polished images, with commentators focusing on clothing, hair, and styling. Harry's tuxedo became a target of ridicule, while David Foster appeared polished and perfectly prepared for the occasion. Katharine McPhee was also pulled into the discussion because of her long-standing connection to Meghan's earlier social world. What had once looked like a friendly connection now became another piece of the growing puzzle. And then there was the history. The relationship between the two couples had once been presented as warm and significant. David Foster had been described as a surrogate father figure to Prince Harry, while earlier encounters created an impression of genuine friendship. Yet critics now looked back at those old photographs differently, questioning whether some of those encounters had been more useful as publicity opportunities than lasting personal relationships. That is what makes the entire episode so uncomfortable. A single missed handshake can be dismissed. A single awkward photograph can be explained. But when that moment is placed beside allegations of backstage tension, contradictory public explanations, celebrity silence, and increasingly guarded social circles, people naturally begin asking whether they are looking at one isolated misunderstanding or one more visible crack in a much larger relationship problem. And if Hollywood has truly begun closing its doors, the most revealing question is no longer why David Foster walked past Meghan. It is why so many people appear increasingly unwilling to walk toward her.